Hello everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I'd like to look at how we decide when the market pattern is clear, and as such we can start looking for trade setups. And as an example, I'd like to look at the USE minis and how they unfolded yesterday. But first we start with our risk disclaimer and remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades are actually taken, they're just shown for illustration and trading purposes only. Remind you there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. Put another way, all professional traders know and understand, but more importantly accept that losses can and will and do unfold. Doesn't matter what trading approach you take yourself, there always will be losing trades. So let's have a look at the three main USE minis yesterday. So let's start with the YM. And just as a sort of backtrack on that, for you guys who've been following MTPredictor for a while will know that we're not a black box system. We don't trade 100% on our signals in the direction of our MTP trend color. We don't do this because basically the markets are random about 50% of the time. By the way, I'm using our add-ons for NinjaTrader 8 in this video. So of course, if the markets are random about half the time and we can't do any analysis on that time period, well then how do we decide when the markets are clear? And for this we use our DPs on our higher time frame charts. The higher time frame is a time frame between 3 and 5 time frames higher. On the chart you're actually trading, so if you say trading daily stocks, you'd look to a weekly. If you say trading a 4-hourly forex, you'd perhaps look to the daily. In these examples we were looking at 3-minute USE minis using the day session only, so for this you'd go out to the 15 minutes. So if we go out to the 15-minute chart, what we do, I'll actually put a bit of a white space on the right there just to show you this. So we go back to previous swing highs and lows. Now here you can see there was a previous pivot high here, so we right mouse click, we do decision point. Can you see how that was on the chart in advance? In other words, it was there before you. So let's see on this YM chart what the market did after we had that 15-minute DP on. You can see it actually went through it, wiggled around a bit, then came back down. But it didn't make a clear reversal right at that DP level, because if we go down to our 3-minute chart, you can see here's our 15-minute resistance, and you see the market went through it, it went down it. In other words, it wasn't really clear what it was doing. Let's compare that to the ES. Exactly the same thing. We'll go back to the higher time frame chart. We'll go back to the last main pivot, swing high or low. Right mouse click, do decision point. You can see there it placed a DP level on our chart. If we go forward, you can see that there it caught that level quite nicely and then made a reversal. If I go down to the 3-minute chart, look how different that looks. There's our 15-minute resistance. And there's the high coming in right at that level. Now doesn't that look a lot clearer than what we had on the YM chart? In other words, the ES unfolded perfectly on our higher time frame analysis. In other words, it went up yesterday, it made a high, and more importantly it made a reversal at our anticipated level. It then started to decline down, then made a corrective rally up with our MTP trend red, so you'll be starting to look for sell setups. Now this is a good example again, is that even though you have your analysis out there and the market is doing exactly what you anticipated, there were no trade setups unfolded. So the market did what you anticipated, in other words, reverse at this level and then decline down off that resistance level, but there were no trade setups to be had. So this is why it's important to follow all the USE minis. Because if I go to the NQ, do exactly the same approach, go to the higher time frame chart, there's the swing pivot high. You can actually place it off both these previous pivots if you wish. You can see the higher one it never reached, but this previous one here it did. It made a reversal right at that. So I'll just take that one off and now go down to the 3-minute chart and just again look how much clearer this is. I'll just scroll back before there. Exactly the same as the ES chart. In other words, the market made the reversal right at the DP. In other words, the market was doing what you anticipated, not like the YM where it was a bit choppy. It then declined down, made a buy setup. Of course, you wouldn't be looking to take the buy setup because it was against our large degree trend off this higher time frame resistance, and also our MTP trend was red. So that was telling you the large degree trend was down. But compare that and how different that looks compared to the ES, because here we had a corrective rally coming up and this time we had an actual sell setup unfold. So here you see this was actually a good looking sell setup because it was in the direction of the large degree trend. Our MTP trend was red, we're coming down off resistance, but more importantly the higher time frame picture was clear. Remember, compare that to what we had on the YM where here the market wasn't making a reversal cleanly at our resistance level. It was a bit choppy, it wasn't quite so clear. So here, this is what we're looking for when it makes a lovely clean clear reversal. So the market trend was down, we're then looking for our sell setups, and here we had a TS1 W3 or wave 3 trade setup. So we place our analysis on the red sell bar, and here's our trade setup. Because it's a W3 trade setup, this is one of our favorite trade setups because what we're looking for here is this to be a corrective wave 2 correction after the initial move of an important high off our DP. So therefore we're looking for the next swing to unfold as a wave 3. That's why our target is at our typical wave 3 WPT. Remember, we use position sizing to keep our initial risk small and under control, in this case less than 2% of a sample $20,000 account. So here you'd have gone short, the market went down to the first target where a profit of approximately 9.6 or 9.5 times the initial risk was available. That's why we like our W3 trade setups, because normally the swings are large in relation to the initial risk, because wave 3s are typically the strongest and longest in a completed 5-wave sequence. We wouldn't have been looking for any buy setups here because our large degree trend was down off that DP. Our MTP trend was red, therefore these were against what we perceived to be the large degree trend. We probably wouldn't be looking to take these sell setups later in the day because we're very close to the close, and the large degree trend again wasn't quite so clear, not as clear as it was back up here. So do you see what we're basically trying to do at MTPredictor? We're trying to then use our higher time frame DPs to then project higher time frame areas of support and resistance, then look to see whether the market does what we anticipate. In other words, the market picture is becoming clear. Once it becomes clear, that then defines our large degree trend. Sometimes we don't get trade setups after that, like in the YM, even though the high was nailed absolutely perfectly with our 15-minute DP. Large degree trend turned down beautifully with our MTP trend color turning red. We didn't get any sell setups, so it's like you're going fishing, but the fish didn't bite. We didn't get any trade setups. That happens sometimes. But then on the NQ, we got an absolutely perfect trade setup come in here. Interesting enough, for you guys who are really into Elliott Wave, if I actually go down to the 1-minute chart, this is quite interesting. Because if I scroll back and look at, there's the high of the day. The initial decline came down, and if I right mouse click here and do Elliott Wave Intermediate for our MTPredictor Elliott Waves, you can see how this initial decline down was 5 waves in the direction of the new trend. The market then made the corrective rally up into our TS3 sell here on our 3-minute chart, and if I do Elliott Wave Intermediate, you can see there's your ABC corrective rally back up here. So on the shorter time frame chart, again the picture was very, very clear indeed as well with our minor patterns. Just clear that off, go back to the 3-minute chart, just to remind you of that particular sell setup there. So hopefully this has been a good video to show you how we use MTPredictor, in this case our MTPredictor add-ons for NinjaTrader 8, to try and decide when the large degree pattern is clear. That's only about half the time, and this is why we developed our unique isolation approach to Elliott Wave. In other words, we understand that half the time markets are basically in a random position. They're not clear. In other words, it's really difficult to see what the market pattern is doing. During that time, we don't even attempt to do any analysis. We don't attempt to do any Elliott Wave patterns. We just wait until the picture becomes clear. We define that by when we have the market making a meaningful reversal at our higher time frame support and resistance levels. In other words, it's doing what we anticipate. Once that defines the large degree trend, we confirm that with our MTP trend color. In other words, everything's telling you the same picture. The market pattern is becoming clear. We then look to define trade setups that fall in that direction, and as you can see, a great example there on the NQ yesterday, where we had a lovely W3 trade setup sell there that returned a profit of approximately 9.5 times the initial risk.